Hey you guys, Mickey here. I hope you're doing well. Today's video is a little bit about propagation and a little bit about just horticulture in general, but I'm excited to share a couple plants that I got. These plants were on clearance, and this is a Meyer lemon, and if you look closely, it's actually 3 plants. So this was on clearance for $12, which is good for citrus. If it's a grafted plant, it's definitely much better, but this is rooted cuttings of Meyer lemon, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to divide these and show you how to make a division and keep it alive. This isn't really technically a division as much as it is splitting out some cuttings that are severely rooted together. And then the other plant that was also on sale is another really great fruit shrub like the lemon. This is acerola or Barbados cherry, and if you look in closely, these are 3 plants in a little, like a small 3-gallon pot, and this was $6. So for $6 and for $12, I'm going to be able to end up with 6 plants, 6 fruiting plants. And acerola is a good one. It's not quite as cold hardy as the Meyer lemon, so freeze to the ground more likely. And I don't know if you guys can see out there, you can actually see one of the flowers. Before I get into it, a big part of taking any sort of cutting or anytime you're doing disturbance to a plant is balancing the roots and the leaf surface area. So the root surface area and leaf surface area. Anytime you go in and even transplanting, but shake the soil even a little bit, a lot of root connections are broken, so like the smaller root connections, and a plant is very quick to rebuild those. That's not a massive disturbance. It could cause a plant to wilt, but that plant will be able to recover really quickly. But when you are snapping roots, cutting roots, things like that, then it's really important and vital to do some cutting up on top as well, because that balance is how the plant grows. That balance between roots and shoots, basically what's happening is the leaves are evaporating moisture, and you guys probably know all this already, but and that's passively pulling water up through the plant, through the stem, through the trunk, through all that, all that way from the soil. So as long as there's a little bit more moisture, more water potential in the soil, and a little bit less up high in the air, a plant is able to grow. And so what happens when the roots have been damaged and the leaves have not been trimmed back is that there's all of this leaf surface area that's still evaporating moisture. Even though a plant's able to regulate its leaf surface area, it's not really ever able to completely shut it down permanently, short of losing those leaves. And that's what plants do intentionally when it's out of balance. But because it's still pulling, what can happen is that water column can be lost. It'll pull, and there's not enough water coming in, and it's like sucking on a straw, except you've reached the bottom of the glass. And a big thing about plants is that once there's air in that water column, a plant can't reestablish it, because all of that sucking is done passively. So it's just pulling it up just through the water potential. So reestablishing it is really tough on a plant. Alright, so my goals in what I'm about to attempt are to separate these with as little tearing of the main roots as possible. I will definitely be damaging some of the smaller roots. And then I'm not going to cut it back initially, but sometimes it's appropriate to cut back first on the leaves. But then I'm going to look and see about how much of the roots I've damaged, and then cut back proportionally on the stems above to try and get it back into balance. Now, another really big thing that you'll notice before I even get into any of this is that we are in the shade right now, and whenever you are working with cuttings or transplants, or anytime you've damaged a plant and it needs to recover, light intensity is probably the most important thing to manage. You could water a plant all the time in perfectly drained soil, but if it's out in full sun, it's not going to make it. And so I'm doing this. I've pre-watered these to make sure they're fully saturated, and they've had some time to really have a lot of water in their stem, in their tissue, and that's going to help them to recover more quickly through this whole process, because it is a lot like surgery. It's very destructive, invasive, but hopefully they can recover from it and be even stronger for it. So here goes. Okay, so now I've got one big strong lemon tree that's going to go back in the pot, and I've got two smaller ones that will take some time to recover and regrow. I didn't trim very much off of those smaller ones because the reality was they had a lot of moisture in their stem, and that wasn't a lot of leaf surface area. So they're going to be in the shade. All of these guys are going to be in the shade for a while to recover, and yeah, and then I'll have 3 plants instead of just one. The reality is, though, that it was better to remove those other 2 trees, other 2 cuttings. Even if I don't get either of them to survive, this plant will be stronger and better off for it, just because that competition and the bark touching in the long run could create some challenges. So, time to pot them up. Now, I almost forgot, but this is the most important one to do a lot of cutting on, because this is the one that has all the leaf surface area to begin with and has a lot of severe root damage. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop for now. I left the tallest point because I think that it can recover quickly, that it had enough root surface area, but when it's very severe, real important to shrink the overall volume as well, almost like make it recognize like it's gone back to a stump and it's regrowth from sucker growth, versus having to maintain some terminal branches. I've just seen from experience that helps. If it's very severely damaged, it needs to be more severe. But I basically went in, removed branches that were close together or blocking anyway, while focusing on leaf surface area, but still maintaining the overall form. So this plant didn't shrink really in size, and that way when it recovers, it really can be back on the same track. Some of the prunes from before, just pruned in the nursery, were pretty bad, and so I also tried to clean up some, but that was a really bad cut. And it'll recover over time. So now it's time for the acerola. I'm hoping that it's a little easier. And here's number 3. And so these all, yeah, took me a lot longer to get apart than I thought, but they all definitely will survive. I'll get them potted on, and then I'll trim back the surface area of the leaves. So on these, I'm going to trim by just shortening them down and making them stocky. One, because acerola is a tropical, and these are going to be in pots for a long time. And 2 is just that they get leggy. This is a plant where that's not as big as a deal to recover. It's going to grow more quickly with the warm weather than the citrus would, recover more quickly as well. So this is a great strong division that will just take off. I would even put this back in full sun probably in about 1 week, 1 to 2 weeks. And now if I wanted even more plants, I can make cuttings from this and probably have them rooted maybe within a month or 2. So propagation is very fun. But let me go ahead and show you where I'm going to cut on the others. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. I'm going to take that big leggy top. I'm going to get rid of a lot of it. And then on my biggest one, which I think is going to recover best, I'm just going to leave more. So I'm going to cut out there. But in each case, I removed still probably 20 or 30%. And it does depend on the plant that you're working with. I know that this plant is pretty quick to recover, pretty tough, as long as it's warm. And so I'm I'm confident. However, it does depend on what you're working with. All right, you guys, I'm gonna get these potted on, watered in, and then they're gonna hang out in the shade behind me for their recovery. So here's a quick follow-up on the video on division and propagation. Here are the acerola. Right here is where the plants live now. This is getting morning sun and afternoon shade, and everybody survived. This is the new growth. It's been over a month, so I said I should have done this sooner, but the acerola pushed new growth right away. Here's where I cut, and after it pushed its new growth, it's pretty much stopped and checked in with its roots and getting its bearings. It's also cooling off, so it's going to slow down a lot. The citrus have done basically nothing. They might have even dropped a few leaves, but they're still sitting. I was actually waiting, thinking that I might be able to get some new growth on the citrus, but they're just being patient. But it doesn't mean they're done for. They're probably going to put on a nice flush next spring. Here's the bigger citrus. So this is a nice lemon tree that's happier now. And actually here, this is all new growth. It's even got some damage from leaf miner. So it is pushing new growth, which is good. And then I had the other main acerola. I put it out in full sun on the driveway. So it's been sitting, and here, all of that is new growth. So there's the follow-up. Hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like and take care.